Well, congratulations on surviving that essay and making your way into Module 7. And in this particular module, we're going to begin to explore some of the best writing tips for narrative writing. We're beginning to branch into different rhetorical modes. Now, what do I mean by rhetorical modes? You may have heard your Comp 1 instructor throwing this term around. And rhetorical is just another word for communication. And modes is a word for ways. So just think of this as different ways to communicate. That's what we mean by rhetorical modes. And we can communicate in a lot of different ways. Let me see if I can kind of break this down and make sense of it. The writing that we've been doing in this class so far has been in what we call illustrative mode, in the rhetorical mode, the communication mode of illustration, because we made a point and then we illustrated it with subpoints. For instance, why do you like being a Viking? Why do you like being a student at Carl Albert? Well, I like it because of the cost, the convenience, and the classes. All right. So you said, I like being a Viking, and then you illustrated it with 3 subpoints. On the essay, where would you go if you had unlimited funds? Where would you go? I would go 3 different places. I would go to the Bahamas, to Alaska, and to Israel, right? So you gave me examples of where you would go. You made a point and then you supported it with subpoints. That's illustrative mode. And we can answer a lot of questions in illustrative mode, but we can't answer every question in illustrative mode. So we have a lot of other modes to choose from. And your Comp 1 instructor is going to be asking you to write in several of these modes, one of which I'm fairly confident that she or he will ask you to write in is narrative. And narrative is all about telling a story, okay? And so that's what I'm going to focus on. Let's go back and talk about rhetorical modes for just a second. Let's say that I asked you, hey, tell me about your first day at Carl Albert. I want to know about your first day at Carl Albert. Would you say, oh, okay, the reason I like being a Viking is because of the cost, the convenience, and the classes? No, okay, because that would be illustrative mode and it wouldn't answer the question, right? So what you would do at this point, instead, you would shift into narrative mode and you would begin to tell me a story about your first day as a student at Carl Albert. Maybe you had all kinds of adventures, or you showed up in the wrong classroom, you missed a deadline, okay, but you would begin to tell me a story about your first day of school, because you've now switched into rhetorical mode. Now, you don't say that out loud. You don't say, I think I shall answer that question in narrative mode, right? Your brain just does that. It shifts into the different modes so that you can communicate effectively. Let's say that I ask you, hey, describe the campus to me. If you've seen the Poto campus, you're going to begin to describe the buildings. You're going to talk to me about the library, the bell tower, right? Your clock tower. You're going to tell me all of these physical entities on campus. So you begin to describe the campus so that I can see it, smell it, taste it, hear it, feel it. That's descriptive mode, right? You wouldn't, if I said describe the campus to me, you wouldn't say, I like it because of the cost, the convenience, of the classes, right? You would switch modes. In the same way, if I said, okay, you've convinced me I want to go to Carl Albert. How do I become a student at Carl Albert? Well, you're not going to answer and say, I like Carl Albert because of the cost, the convenience, and the classes. Right? No, you're going to switch into process mode, and you're going to begin to tell me step by step how I become a student at Carl Albert. First, Ms. Hill, you need to fill out that admissions application. Then you need to touch base with financial aid, and so on and so forth. And you would walk me through those steps. So you can see there are several different ways that we can communicate with one another. And what we're trying to do in our Comp 1 classes is to help you be prepared to communicate in any of those rhetorical modes. So don't be intimidated by that word or by that concept of rhetorical modes, okay? So now, we're about to talk about narrative mode. What does it mean to tell a story? And in this particular video, I'm going to cover that with you. I'm also going to be talking to you about verb tense, because a lot of times when we start to tell a story, we tend to shift tenses. We'll be telling about it as though it happened to me, and then the next thing you know, it's happening right now. So I'm moving from present tense to past tense and back and forth. We're going to address that in one of our first videos and with one of our first quizzes in this module. I'm also going to be talking to you about quotation marks, because a lot of times in a narrative, you use quotation marks to show someone's exact words. So we will find out when to use those quotation marks and how to use them. I hope that this will be a very beneficial module for you. I will not be asking you to write in narrative mode. This is just to complement what you're doing in your Comp 1. And remember that we do have a couple of quizzes in this particular module. So have fun with your narrative writing.